Hello students, today in this video we are going to study the chapter, the third level of our book Vistas. The third level by Zach Finney is about the harsh realities of war. War has irreversible consequences, thus leaving people in a state of insecurity. It is also about modern day problems and how common man tends to escape reality by various means. In this story, a man named Charlie hallucinates and reaches the third level of the Grand Central Station, which only has two levels. The story begins with the mention of a third level at the Grand Central Station, which only has two levels in real. The protagonist himself is aware that even the president of New York Central and the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad would express great confidence in the existence of only two levels, but he himself has been to the third level. Considering the entire scenario, Charlie, the protagonist, had a word with his psychiatrist friend. He explained that Charlie was experiencing a waking dream wish fulfillment, or in other words, hallucination. According to the psychiatrist, Charlie was unhappy. Upon explaining further, it becomes clear that it is the burden of all the modern problems that is pushing him to experience the apparent perception of something not present. He tends to escape the reality. Charlie agreed with what his psychiatrist friend had to say, but he still found it a bit odd to have been to the third level of the Grand Central Station. Charlie begins to believe in the possibility that he has been experiencing all this to escape the harsh realities of modern world. His friends agreed to it as well. Even his stamp collecting is a sort of asylum he resorted to in order to feel protected. On the other hand, he starts thinking otherwise. His grandfather started his stamp collection, but in those days they had not seen the consequences of war and there was peace, harmony, and security. His grandfather must have not been insecure. The collection, moreover, was amazing with blocks of four of practically every US issue. Even President Roosevelt collected stamps. He starts explaining what exactly happened and begins with how he chose to take the subway to his apartment instead of the usual bus after a late night shift. He did this in order to save time. He describes himself as an ordinary man of 31, dressed in a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. It was so ordinary that he could see other similar men at the station. He explains how he was in his normal state of mind, not wanting to escape from anywhere. All he wanted was to be with his wife, Louisa, at that hour. He still does not understand why this happened with him. Charlie comes to the part of the incident where he entered the Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and took the stairs to the first level where one boarded trains like the 20th century. Then he went down another floor to reach the second level from where the suburban trains leave. From there, he entered an arched doorway and got lost. It was nothing unusual for him because even if he had come to that station 1,000 times, there were occasions he bumped into new corridors and doorways. Once he entered the wrong lobby and reached Roosevelt Hotel, and another time in an office building which was 3 blocks away. He wondered that Grand Central was expanding at a very fast rate, just like a tree with its roots. It is no big deal that they even have a secret tunnel under the city to the Times Square or maybe the Central Park. He feels it might be because Grand Central is a place of exit for innumerable people. He also managed to escape reality because of the same reason, although he never shared it with his psychiatrist. The unusual corridor he had entered into began angling left and slanting downward, which he felt odd about, but nevertheless he kept on walking. There was no one except him, and the voice of his feet echoed. He finally heard the sound of the people talking from a distance. Then he took a left and walked down the stairs again, only to reach the third level of the Grand Central. He thought he had somehow made his way back to the second level, but as he noticed, the room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information booth in the center was wooden and old looking. The man in the booth was also different, and the station was dim lit, for there were open flame gas lights. Charlie could see brass spittoons everywhere when suddenly a glimpse of light caught his eye and he saw a man pulling his gold watch from the waist. He was dressed in an old fashioned style. Suddenly, he noticed that everyone was dressed like the 19th century. It was basically the time before deadly wars. So many beards and fancy mustaches all around, something that the protagonist had never seen before. He even saw a very small courier and abyss locomotive, which made him sure about which time he is in. To validate his suspicion, he went over to the newspaper boy who was selling The World, a newspaper which was discontinued years ago. There were some headlines about the then President Cleveland. The date on the front page was also June 11th, 1894. He was now sure. Immediately he went to the ticket window to get the tickets for Galsburg, Illinois for him and his wife. It was a wonderful town with a lot of greenery. He was well aware that from here one could buy tickets that would take them anywhere in the United States. He describes how things were in 1984 before the two world wars took place. Goldsburg was a wonderful town with big farmhouses, huge lawns, tremendous trees, means greenery all over the place. And the summer evening, the evenings were twice as long. People were having leisure time to sit and lit the cigars, talking quietly. Women kept on waving the fans around the fireflies. It was a peaceful time before the World War. That's why the writer wanted to be there, and he thinks of that the First World War will be 20 years off from there, and the Second World War 40 years from the time. So he wanted to buy the tickets. As the clerk calculated the fare, he looked at Charlie's fancy headband. Charlie just had enough for one side journey. Just as he took out money, the clerk informed that this is not the acceptable legal tender, and by any chance, if he tried to be smart, he won't be able to get away with it. He glanced at his cash drawer and realized that currency used back then was different and almost double the size. He ran out because he did not want to go to jail even in 1894. They ended after he came out. The next day, he went to withdraw his entire savings and got them converted into old money by paying some amount of premium. It cost him much and even worried his psychiatrist friend, but he still went with it. Back then, eggs cost 13 cents a dozen. But unfortunately, he could never find the way to the third level corridor again, despite hard efforts. His wife, Louisa, was pretty worried when he got to know about it all. After a while, he went back to finding distraction with the help of stamps. Somehow, Sam, the psychiatrist, disappeared out of the blue. Charlie suspected that he had gone to Galsburg. He finds himself in the time space of 1894. One night, Charlie came across a first day cover. It is an envelope with a stamp on it. That is stamp collectors mail to themselves on the first day of its sale to mark the day. They are just blank inside and are not meant to be opened. That night he found by surprise one of his grandfather's old first day covers. Someone had mailed it to his father at his home at Galsburg, as he saw from the address on the envelope. The postmark showed that it had been there since July 18, 1894. The stamp had a picture of President Garfield on it. It was a 6-cent dull brown color stamp. His grandfather had put it in his stamp collection, and the Charlie now discovered it. The paper inside and a letter written in it. The letter read as the letter talked about how the writer wished his third label story was true until he actually started believing it to be true. He had found the third label and had been there for 2 weeks. He describes the place he was at that time. He asks Charlie and Lucy to never stop searching for the third label and come back. The letter had been signed off as Sam. Charlie found out from the coin store that he used to visit that Sam had bought old currency worth $800, which was to be utilized in a hay, feed, and grain business, which what he always wished to do. He could not go back to his old business, certainly not in Galsburg, Illinois. The story ends at a mysterious note where Charlie is wondering that Sam is a psychiatrist. From here, he got to know that definitely Sam has reached Galsburg, and what he has told him that the existence of the third label at Grand Central Station exists. So here we come to the end of this story. Thank you.